I gave my parents everything to save their house. $60,000 of my hard-earned money, my retirement savings, and the down payment for my own home. I did it because they were family and they needed help. 6 months later, I found out they had cut me out of their will completely. They gave everything to my cousin who never helped them once. Then my mother had the nerve to call and ask for $15,000 more. She didn't even say thank you. She just expected me to pay because family is blood. They used me. They lied to me. They took my money while planning to leave me with nothing. Now I'm going to use my skills as a corporate lawyer to take everything they have. My parents taught me that debts must be paid, and they owe me more than money. By the time I'm done, they'll have nothing left. Not their house, not their reputation, not their precious social standing. This is how a daughter gets revenge, when family betrays her. I gave my parents everything to save their house. $60,000 of my hard-earned money, my retirement savings, and the down payment for my own home. I did it because they were family and they needed help. 6 months later, I found out they had cut me out of their will completely. They gave everything to my cousin who never helped them once. Then my mother had the nerve to call and ask for $15,000 more. She didn't even say thank you. She just expected me to pay because family is blood. They used me. They lied to me. They took my money while planning to leave me with nothing. Now I'm going to use my skills as a corporate lawyer to take everything they have. My parents taught me that debts must be paid, and they owe me more than money. By the time I'm done, they'll have nothing left. Not their house, not their reputation, not their precious social standing. This is how a daughter gets revenge, when family betrays her. The first time my mother called about the house, I was in the middle of preparing for a major acquisition. Kellerman and Frost had just made me the youngest female senior associate in the firm's history, and I was determined to prove they had made the right choice. "Minji, we need your help," my mother said, her voice carrying that particular tremor. She reserved for emergencies. "The bank is taking the house in 3 months." I listened as she explained about my father's medical bills, the missed mortgage payments, the mounting interest. She did not ask directly. She never did. The expectation was implicit in her careful recounting of their misfortune. "How much do you need?" I asked, already calculating which assets I could liquidate quickly. $60,000, she said. "We have tried everything." The amount represented my entire retirement fund, plus the down payment I had been saving for my own apartment. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of instant ramen and delayed gratification, of saying no to vacations and yes to extra cases. But they were my parents. They had sacrificed everything to bring me to America, to put me through school, to give me opportunities they never had. "I will wire it tomorrow," I said. My father wept when I handed them the cashier's check that weekend. My mother held my hands in hers, running her fingers over the calluses from my pen, evidence of the long hours that had earned that money. "You are a good daughter," my father said. "The ancestors would be proud." "Family is blood," my mother reminded me as she had throughout my childhood. "And blood must never be betrayed." I believed them. Even when I returned to my rented apartment instead of the condo I had been planning to buy. Even when I started rebuilding my savings from zero. Even when I worked through Christmas to make up for the financial setback. I believed them because they were my parents, and in a Korean family, that meant everything. 2 years passed. I made partner at the firm ahead of schedule, specializing in mergers and acquisitions. I was known for my attention to detail, for finding leverage where others saw none, for understanding the psychology behind business decisions. The Bar Association dinner was black tie, one of those networking events that are technically optional, but career suicide to miss. I was discussing a recent case with Judge Harrington when I spotted David Chen across the room. David had been in my law school study group. Now he was with Kim, Park & Associates, a small firm specializing in estate planning for the Asian American community in Queens. "Minji, how long has it been?" David said, embracing me. "Still dismantling corporations for sport?" We caught up over champagne. His firm was growing, my career was soaring. The conversation flowed easily until he mentioned, with no particular emphasis, "I handled your parents' estate planning last year. Your father speaks very highly of you." I kept my expression neutral. My parents did their estate planning with your firm? Yes, quite thorough for a family with modest assets. Though, I was surprised they decided to leave. Everything to your cousin Jay. Usually the children. He must have seen something in my face because he stopped mid-sentence. I assumed you knew, he said quietly. I did not go home that night. Instead, I went to my office and pulled every financial record I had related to my parents. The $60,000 transfer. The follow-up emails asking if they needed anything else. The thank you card they had sent, promising I would be rewarded tenfold for my filial piety. The next morning, I called my cousin Jay with a carefully crafted story about helping my parents organize their affairs. He was surprised to hear from me but confirmed what David had said. 6 months after I had saved their house, my parents had rewritten their will to exclude me completely. I might have rationalized it somehow. Perhaps they thought Jay needed it more. Perhaps there was some cultural nuance I was missing, if my mother had not called the following week. Minji, we have unexpected expenses, she said. No preamble, no inquiry about my life. We need another $15,000. For the first time, I hesitated. What kind of expenses, mother? She bristled at the question. Is a daughter supposed to interrogate her parents? Family is blood, Minji. Have we not given you everything? In that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood. This was not an oversight, this was not cultural, this was calculated exploitation, pure and simple. Let me think about it, I said, my voice steady despite the roaring in my ears. I will call you back. I hung up the phone and opened my laptop. I did not feel hurt or angry. Those emotions would come later, I knew. Instead, I felt a cold, crystalline focus settling over me. As a lawyer specializing in complex corporate takeovers, I knew exactly how to dismantle something valuable piece by piece, until nothing remained. My parents had taught me that family is blood. They were right, and blood makes excellent ink for ledgers that must be balanced. The first phase of any successful takeover is research. Understanding your target's vulnerabilities, their dependencies, their pressure points. I approached my parents' destruction with the same methodical precision I brought to my most complex cases. I began by creating a timeline of our relationship, focusing on financial transactions. The pattern was clear. Regular requests for money, escalating amounts, emotional manipulation when I hesitated. The $60,000 was merely the largest in a lifelong series of extractions. Next, I assessed their assets and liabilities. The house I had saved, was their primary asset. They had remortgaged it 8 months after my bailout, ostensibly for repairs, but the timing aligned perfectly with their 3-week trip to Korea and Japan. A trip they had not mentioned to me. Their social standing in the Korean-American community was equally important to them. My father served as treasurer for their church. My mother was president of the Korean Cultural Association. They had cultivated an image as successful immigrants whose daughter had fulfilled the American dream. Most importantly, I documented their financial irregularities. My father's business dealt primarily in cash, with inconsistent reporting. My mother's cultural association had accounting discrepancies. Nothing major, but enough to create leverage. I called my mother back 2 days later. I can help with the $15,000, I said, but I need to understand your finances better. To protect you. She hesitated, but the prospect of more money won out. What do you mean? I am concerned about how the money is being managed. As your daughter and a lawyer, I want to make sure everything is in order. I will need access to your accounts, your tax returns for the past 5 years, and documentation of Dad's business expenses. That is private information, Minji. So is my bank account, Mother, but you are asking me to open it for you, again. The silence stretched between us. I will speak to your father, she finally said. 3 days later, they agreed to my terms, not because they trusted me, but because they needed what I had. Money. It was ironic, really, how easily they gave me the ammunition I would use against them. What I found confirmed everything. There had been no significant medical bills before my $60,000 bailout. The foreclosure threat had been real, but caused by their own extravagance, not by misfortune. They had systematically misrepresented their finances not just to me, but to everyone. I found evidence they had borrowed money from 3 other relatives with no intention of repayment. I discovered my father had been skimming from the church accounts. I learned my mother had misappropriated cultural association funds for personal use. I did not confront them with any of this. Instead, I compiled, documented, and planned. I opened secure email accounts under pseudonyms. I established connections with the IRS, the state tax authority, and the bank C's, holding their mortgage. Then I sent my mother the $15,000 she had requested. "Thank you for trusting me with your financial information," I wrote in the accompanying note. "Family is blood, after all." She called to thank me, her voice warm with victory. She thought she had won. But the game had only just begun. The anonymous tip to the IRS was just detailed enough to trigger an audit. 3 specific transactions, all documented in the files my parents had provided. Me with just enough context to raise red flags without revealing the source. My father called me in a panic 2 weeks later. "The IRS is auditing us," he said. "Your mother is beside herself." "That is terrible," I said, infusing my voice with appropriate concern. "Do you have representation?" "We cannot afford a tax attorney," he said. I let the silence hang, making him ask, "Minji, could you help us? You are not a tax specialist, but you understand these things better than we do." "Of course, Dad," I said. "Send me everything they have asked for. I will take care of it." The audit was just the beginning. While managing their IRS troubles, ensuring compliance while carefully highlighting rather than hiding their inconsistencies, I moved on to phase 2. I reached out to my cousin Jay, suggesting lunch. We had never been close, but blood is blood, as my mother liked to say. Over bibimbap, I mentioned casually that I was helping my parents with some financial issues. "They are getting older," I said. "I am concerned about their decision-making." "Your father seemed very sharp when he updated." "Their will," Jay replied, then looked embarrassed. "I am sorry, I assumed you knew." I feigned surprise, then acceptance. "They must have their reasons," I said. "I just want what is best for them." I paused, then added, "Did they discuss the mortgage with you? Since you will inherit the house eventually, I thought you should know they have taken out a second mortgage against it." The seed was planted. Over the next few months, I cultivated it carefully, sharing select concerns with Jay about my parents' financial decisions. Not enough to create alarm, just enough to foster doubt. Meanwhile, I leveraged my corporate contacts to quietly create problems for my father's business. A delayed permit here, a regulatory inquiry there. Nothing traceable to me, just an accumulation of small obstacles that gradually strangled his cash flow. For my mother, I took a different approach. The Korean Cultural Association was her pride, her social standing in the community built around her presidency. When the association sought pro bono legal assistance with a property purchase, I was happy to volunteer my services. This gave me legitimate access to their financial records. What I found was sloppy accounting rather than malicious fraud, but it did not matter. Perception is reality. I drafted a memo outlining potential concerns and ensured it reached the top association's board members. My mother called me, livid. "Someone is trying to smear me," she hissed. "The board is questioning my leadership." "That is terrible," I said. "Would you like me to speak with them? As your daughter and their attorney?" She accepted eagerly. At the board meeting, I was the model of filial loyalty, defending my mother while acknowledging the understandable concerns. I proposed a solution. My mother would step down temporarily while I helped restructure the association's financial oversight. The board agreed, relieved to have a professional handling the situation. My mother was effectively removed from power while believing I had saved her from worse consequences. The perfect corporate takeover strategy, make your target believe, surrender was their idea. 6 months into my campaign, my parents' world was shrinking. The IRS audit had revealed enough issues to trigger state tax investigations. My father's business was failing. My mother had lost her social standing. Their joint checking account was overdrawn. The second mortgage was 3 months behind. They turned to me with increasing frequency, and I was always there, helpful and concerned. Every solution I offered resolved the immediate crisis while positioning them for the next one. I became indispensable to them, their savior and, though they did not realize it, their executioner. When they could no longer make their mortgage payments, I suggested they sell the house I had saved before foreclosure damaged their credit further. They agreed, seeing no alternative. "We can move in with Jay," my mother said. "He has plenty of room." I smiled. "Let me speak with him first, to make sure he is prepared." Jay was receptive to my call. We had been meeting regularly for lunch over the past few months, and I had carefully cultivated our relationship. When I told him about my parents' financial situation and their plan to move in with him, his expression shifted from surprise to concern. "They want to live with me? They never mention this," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "Minji, I am barely making rent on my own place. I cannot support 2 more people." "I understand," I said sympathetically. "And to be honest, I am worried about you taking on their financial burdens. There are things about their situation you should know before making any decisions." Over the next hour, I shared select documents with Jay: their mounting debt, the second mortgage, the tax issues. I positioned myself not as their accuser, but as a concerned daughter trying to protect everyone involved, including him. "I had no idea," Jay said, visibly distressed. "They told me they were financially secure when they updated their will. Your father said the house would be a valuable inheritance." "My parents have always been private about their finances," I replied. "Even from me. I only discovered the extent of their problems when I began helping them with the IRS audit." I let that sink in, then added, "I am in the process of purchasing their house from the bank. It is the only way to prevent foreclosure at this point. They will need somewhere to stay, but I cannot invite them to live with me given our current relationship." Jay looked at me confused. "Why would you buy their house after they cut you out of the will?" I smiled sadly. "Because regardless of what they have done, I do not want to see them homeless, but I also will not enable their financial irresponsibility anymore." By the time we finished our coffee, Jay had agreed to tell my parents he could not accommodate them. More importantly, he had begun to question the inheritance they had promised him. The foundations of their safety net were crumbling, just as I had planned. The closing on my parents' house was scheduled for the following week. I had negotiated directly with the bank, offering to pay off the second mortgage at 70 cents on the dollar. For the bank, it was a better deal than foreclosure. For me, it was the centerpiece of my strategy. My parents had not been informed of the buyer's identity. They believed a real estate investment company had made the offer. I had used one of my firm's shell corporations for the transaction, a legal entity typically employed for anonymous corporate acquisitions. 2 days before closing, I invited my parents to dinner at an upscale Korean restaurant. They accepted eagerly, likely hoping I would offer them housing assistance. Throughout the meal, they were solicitous and flattering, praising my career, success, and reminiscing about family memories. "Jay tells us he cannot accommodate us after all," my mother said as dessert arrived. "We are very disappointed." "I am sorry to hear that," I replied. "Have you considered a smaller rental apartment?" My father looked down at his plate. "Our credit is not good right now because of the tax issues. No landlord will accept our application." "That is unfortunate," I said, taking a deliberate sip of tea. "Minji," my mother began, her voice shifting to the emotional register she used when asking for money. "We were hoping perhaps you might help us with a security deposit and first month's rent." "Just until we get back on our feet," I set down my cup. "I have already helped you with $75,000 in the past 2 years. How much more do you need?" My father attempted to intervene. "We are grateful for your help, Minji. We truly are." "Are you?" I asked, my voice calm. "Is that why you rewrote your will to exclude me 6 months after I gave you $60,000 to save your house?" The silence that fell over the table was absolute. My mother's face drained of color. My father's mouth opened and closed without sound. "Yes, I know about the will," I continued. "I have known for some time. Just as I know there were no substantial medical bills before you asked for the money. Just as I know about the vacation to Korea you took after remortgaging the house I saved." "That is not," my mother began, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Please do not lie to me anymore. I have seen all your financial records, remember? I have been managing your IRS audit for months. I know everything." My father attempted damage. Control. "Minji, you must understand. These decisions were made for complex reasons. I understand perfectly, I replied. You used me. You took my money while planning to leave me nothing, and now you are here to ask for more. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder, placing it on the table between us. This contains the details of the sale of your house. It closes tomorrow. I thought you might be interested to know that the buyer is Parkview Holdings LLC. I paused, letting the information sink in. I am Parkview Holdings LLC. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock as they realized the implications. You bought our house, my mother whispered. Yes, and since you will need to vacate the property within 30 days, I have taken the liberty of researching affordable senior housing options. I slid a second folder toward them. These facilities accept residents with poor credit scores, though the accommodations are basic. My father's face had turned ashen. Minji, we are your parents. Yes, you have reminded me of that fact whenever you needed something from me, I said. You also taught me that family is blood, and blood must never be betrayed. It seems only one of us remembered that lesson. I signaled for the check. I will give you 1 week to decide which senior housing facility you prefer. After that, I will make the decision for you. As I stood to leave, my mother grabbed my wrist. You cannot do this to us. What will people say? I looked down at her, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. They will say you raised a daughter who learned your lessons well. Perhaps too well. I removed her hand from my wrist and walked out of the restaurant, leaving them with the bill. It was a small thing, petty even, but it felt right. The first of many debts they would repay. The community center was reserved for the following month's Harvest Festival. As the event's primary sponsor through my firm, I had requested a special recognition ceremony for community elders. My parents were specifically invited as honored guests, unaware that the event would serve as the public stage for the final phase of my plan. Everything was falling into place. My parents were now living in a small one-bedroom apartment in a facility for low-income seniors. Their social status was diminishing daily as rumors of their financial troubles spread through the community. Jay had publicly distanced himself from them after discovering the house he was supposed to inherit was now worthless. All that remained was to complete their exposure, to strip away the last vestiges of their respectability in front of the community they had manipulated for years. As I drove home to their former house, now mine, I felt no regret, no hesitation. Only the certainty that justice would soon be served, cold and complete. The day of the Harvest Festival arrived with perfect autumn weather. I had personally overseen every detail of the event, from the traditional decorations to the catering from the most prestigious Korean restaurant in the city. The community center gleamed, and the attendance list included every prominent member of the Korean American community in the area. My parents arrived early, as I knew they would. Despite their reduced circumstances, they had dressed in their finest clothes, desperate to maintain appearances. My mother wore the hanbok she reserved for only the most important occasions. My father had his hair freshly cut and wore his one remaining good suit. They greeted community members with forced smiles, avoiding questions about their new living situation. I watched from across the room as they navigated the social landmines I had carefully laid over the past months. Rumors and whispers followed. Them. Old friends kept conversations brief before finding reasons to move away. I approached them an hour into the event, playing the role of dutiful daughter in public. I am glad you could make it, I said, loud enough for others to hear. You look well. This is a beautiful event, my mother replied, her smile strained. Everyone is saying how generous your firm has been with the sponsorship. Family values are important to me, I said, as you taught me. My father shifted uncomfortably. Minji, perhaps we could speak privately after the ceremony about our situation. Of course, I replied. But first I have a special presentation planned. You are both being honored today after all. Confusion flickered across their faces, quickly replaced by pleasure. They still did not understand what was coming. Honored? No one mentioned this, my mother said. I wanted it to be a surprise, I explained. Please, take your seats in the front row. It will begin soon. As they moved toward their designated seats, I approached the stage. The community center director introduced me, praising my firm's generosity and my personal commitment to preserving Korean cultural values in America. The audience applauded as I took the podium. "Thank you all for coming today," I began. "The Harvest Festival is a time of gathering, of celebrating abundance, and of giving thanks for what we have received. It is also a time of reckoning, when accounts are settled before the new season begins." I looked directly at my parents in the front row. Today, I want to honor two people who taught me everything I know about family, duty, and consequences. My parents, Sung and Mija Park. Polite applause rippled through the audience. My parents smiled, visibly relieved and pleased by this unexpected recognition. My parents immigrated to this country with nothing, working tirelessly to build a life here. They sacrificed to put me through school. They taught me that family is blood, and blood must never be betrayed. My mother's smile faltered slightly. She sensed a shift in my tone. 2 years ago, my parents called to tell me they were losing their home. They said medical bills had overwhelmed them, that they faced foreclosure unless they could raise $60,000 immediately. As their daughter, I did not hesitate. I liquidated my retirement savings. I canceled plans to buy my own home. I took out personal loans. I projected the bank transfer receipt onto the large screen behind me. Several people in the audience murmured, in surprise at the amount. 6 months later, my parents rewrote their will to exclude me entirely. The projected image changed to show the will, with relevant sections highlighted. My parents froze in their seats as gasps spread through the audience. They transferred all assets to my cousin Jay, who had contributed nothing to their support. Then, after securing their future without me, my mother called again, asking for $15,000 more. I projected my mother's phone records showing the calls. I gave them that money too. In exchange, they provided me with access to their financial records. One by one, I displayed the evidence I had gathered over the past year. Bank statements showing there had been no significant medical bills, credit card charges for luxury purchases and travel, loans from other relatives never repaid, church funds misappropriated, cultural association money diverted to personal accounts. The audience watched in stunned silence. Some faces showed shock, others anger. A few elderly people looked away, embarrassed to witness such a public shaming. But no one left. No one interrupted. My father half rose from his seat, his face contorted, with rage and shame. "Minji, stop this now." "I am simply sharing the truth, Father. Is honesty not a value you taught me?" My cousin Jay stood up from his seat several rows back. "Is this true?" he asked my parents. "Did you lie about the medical bills?" My mother turned to him, desperate. "Jay, you do not understand. Family matters are complicated." "Like the matter of your will?" I interjected softly. "Should we discuss how you promised Jay the house that I saved? The house you then remortgaged to the point of worthlessness?" The community watched in stunned silence as the respected elders were systematically exposed, not by an enemy, but by their own daughter, using their own words, their own documents, their own actions against them. My mother made one last attempt. She stood, turned to the crowd, and spoke in Korean. "A daughter should honor her parents, not shame them. Family is blood, and blood must never be betrayed." I finished for her, also in Korean. "You taught me that, Mother. It is the one lesson I took to heart." I turned to address the community, directly. "I am not doing this for money or inheritance. I have succeeded on my own terms. I am doing this because consequences matter. Truth matters. And yes, family matters, which is why betrayal within family cuts deepest." I gestured to a stack of folders on a side table. "I have prepared copies of all documentation for anyone who wishes to verify my claims. For those who loaned my parents money, I have included legal options for recovery. For the Church and Cultural Association, I have outlined restructuring recommendations to prevent future misappropriation." My father and mother sat rigid with shock and humiliation as their community, the social world they had spent decades building, absorbed the truth about them. "As for the house," I concluded, "when my parents could no longer maintain the mortgage payments, I purchased it directly from the bank. They now live in senior housing appropriate to their means, while I reside in the home they once occupied, the home I paid for twice. I closed my portfolio and looked directly at my parents. You needed $60,000 to save your home, and I gave it freely. You betrayed that gift and asked for more. Now you have nothing, and I have everything, including the truth, which I have given back to you today. I stepped away from the podium to absolute silence. Then my cousin Jay began to applaud slowly. Others joined, not celebrating my parents' downfall but acknowledging the justice of my response. As I walked off the stage, I saw my mother's face, twisted with humiliation and rage. My father sat with his head bowed, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Their social destruction was complete. They would never recover from this, not in this community where reputation was everything. I felt no joy, no sadness, only the cool satisfaction of a case successfully concluded. As I had told countless corporate clients, sometimes total dismantlement is the only appropriate response to systematic exploitation. Outside the community center, several elders approached me. They did not condemn my actions, but nodded with solemn understanding. In our culture, filial piety was sacred, but so was justice. By exposing my parents' betrayal rather than suffering it silently, I had upheld the deeper values of our community. You honored the true meaning of family today, one respected grandmother told me, squeezing my hand, not by protecting those who betrayed you, but by holding them accountable. I thanked her, feeling the first hint of emotion crack through my professional facade. Perhaps there would be healing someday, I thought. Not reconciliation with my parents. That bridge was thoroughly burned, but healing for me. As I drove home to the house that was now rightfully mine in every sense, I felt the weight of the past 2 years begin to lift. The ledger was balanced. The debt was paid. My parents had taught me that family is blood. What they forgot is that I am their blood too, and I never forget a debt. 1 week after the Harvest Festival, I received the call I had been expecting. The community center director informed me that my father had resigned from his position as a church treasurer. My mother had withdrawn from all her social organizations. They had become ghosts in the community they once dominated. I thanked her for the information and hung up, feeling neither satisfaction nor remorse. The consequences of their actions had arrived as inevitably as winter follows autumn. There was a certain mathematical precision to it all, a balance sheet, perfectly reconciled. Later that day, as I was reviewing case files in my home office, formerly my father's study, the doorbell rang. I checked the security camera from my phone, surprised to see my cousin Jay standing on the porch. We had not spoken since the festival. "I hope I am not disturbing you," he said when I opened the door. "Not at all. Please come in." I led him to the living room, noticing how his eyes tracked the changes I had made to the house. Gone were my parents' dark, heavy furnishings, replaced with clean, modern pieces that reflected my own taste. Only the traditional moon jar my grandmother had brought from Korea remained, a reminder of my heritage separate from my parents. "The house looks different," Jay commented, accepting the tea I offered. "It needed to be different," I replied simply. He nodded, understanding without explanation. After a moment, he reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. "I came to give you this. It is the inheritance notification your parents sent me when they changed their will. I do not want it anymore." I took the envelope but did not open it. "This changes nothing, Jay. The house is already mine, legally purchased from the bank." "I know. This is not about legal ownership. This is about setting things right." He hesitated, then added, "And about thanking you for telling me the truth. They would have used me too eventually." "Probably," I agreed. That was their pattern. We sat in companionable silence, drinking tea in the house that had been the center of so much drama. When Jay left, he embraced me awkwardly, a gesture that suggested not just family obligation, but genuine respect. I placed the unopened envelope in my desk drawer. Another account settled, another loose end tied. 3 days later, I received another visitor, this one unexpected. My mother stood on my porch, alone, wearing clothes I did not recognize, inexpensive and ill-fitting. She had aged years in just weeks, her once carefully maintained appearance now neglected. Against my better judgment, I invited her in. She refused tea, refused to sit, instead standing rigidly in the center of the living room, looking at my furnishings with barely concealed distaste. "You have changed everything," she said finally. "Yes." "Your father is ill," she said abruptly. "The stress of what you did has made him sick. The doctor says his heart is weak." I recognized the strategy immediately. Guilt had always been her weapon of choice. "I am sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "Has he seen a specialist?" "We cannot afford specialists now. Our insurance is basic. You know this." I did know. I had researched the coverage at the senior facility where I had placed them. It was adequate, but not comprehensive. "What do you want, Mother?" She drew herself up, summoning the dignity that had once intimidated me. "We want to come home. This is our house. We built our lives here." "This is my house now," I corrected her gently. "I paid for it twice. Once when I gave you $60,000, and again when I purchased it from the bank. We are your parents." "Yes, and you taught me about consequences." Her face hardened. "So this is your revenge? Letting your father die in that tiny apartment while you live in our house?" "This is not revenge, Mother. This is justice. There is a difference." She switched tactics, her voice softening. "Minji, we made a mistake. We should not have changed the will. We see that now. We were afraid of growing old without security." "So afraid that you were willing to sacrifice my security?" I asked. "So afraid that you lied about medical bills, took my money, excluded me from your will, and then asked for more?" "We are sorry." The words hung in the air between us. Too little and far too late. I studied her face, searching for genuine remorse and finding only calculation. She was still playing a game, still trying to manipulate me. "Your apology is noted," I said formally. "But it changes nothing. This is my house now. Your home is at Pine Meadows Senior Living. We will tell everyone what you have done," she threatened, "how you have abandoned your parents in their time of need." I smiled, feeling almost sorry for her. "Everyone already knows what I have done, Mother. I did it publicly, with evidence. And everyone already knows what you have done." That was the point of the Harvest Festival presentation. Her face collapsed, the last vestige of her power play dissolving. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "What will we do?" she whispered. "You will live within your means. You will accept the consequences of your actions. You will rebuild whatever you can from where you are now." I paused, then added, "Just as I had to do after giving you my savings and retirement fund." "It is not the same." "No, it is not," I agreed. "I was young and had time to recover financially. You are not, and do not." My mother looked around the living room one last time, her gaze lingering on my grandmother's moon jar, the only item I had kept from their time in the house. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you," she said, a final attempt to wound me. "I do not think so," I replied calmly. "She was the one who first taught me that family is blood, and blood must never be betrayed. You simply helped me understand what that truly means." I showed her to the door. She paused on the threshold, perhaps hoping for a last-minute reprieve, a sign of weakness she could exploit. I gave her none. "Goodbye, Mother." I closed the door gently but firmly, listening to her footsteps retreat down the path. That evening, I sat in my living room, the house quiet around me. I felt no triumph, no vindication, only a sense of completion. The accounts were settled, the ledger was balanced. Whatever happened to my parents now would be the natural consequence of their own actions, not the result of my intervention. 1 month later, I received a letter from my father. Unlike my mother, he did not ask to return home. He did not make excuses or attempt to manipulate me. Instead, he wrote a simple acknowledgement of what they had done, ending with words that surprised me with their clarity. "We taught you too well, Minji. You learned from us that family is blood, but we forgot to teach you about forgiveness. Perhaps that is our greatest failure as parents." I placed his letter in the drawer with Jay's envelope, another document in the case that was now closed. On the anniversary of the day I had given them $60,000 to save their house, I hosted a dinner party. My home was filled with colleagues, friends, and those community members who had stood by me. Cousin Jay came with his new fiancée. We ate, drank, and celebrated in rooms that no longer held ghosts. In my father's former study, now my home office, I had hung a single framed document, the receipt for my original wire transfer of $60,000. Across it, in red ink, I had written just 3 words: paid in full. My parents had taught me that family is blood. What they forgot is that I am their blood too, and I never forget a debt.